This is the 2025 Husqvarna Svartpilen 801, and for the last 4 days, I've been testing it in a variety of different environments to try to get a feel of, 1, what this bike really is, 2, what its capabilities and pros and cons are, and 3, who its competitors really are, and whether or not this is the one that me and you should be spending our money on. Now, full disclosure, this video would not be possible without the help of Studio Cycle. They are Toronto's Husqvarna dealer. I asked them if I could borrow a bike for a few days. They said, sure, take the 801. They will not be seeing this review before it goes live. They have no input on what I do or don't say in this video. And don't worry, in the areas where I think this bike sucks, I will definitely let you know, because tearing apart motorcycles is kind of what I do on my channel. So let's get into it. All right, let's start with what the Husqvarna Svartpilen 801 is and what it isn't. What it is, in my opinion, is a neo-retro motorcycle, kind of a modern retro bike. You've got upright ergonomics, you have retro-inspired touches, you have a ton of modern tech, it's lightweight, you got a fun motor, and a lot of great little touches like fully adjustable front and back suspension, 5-inch TFT display, and did I mention a lot of tech? It all comes together for a motorcycle that just oozes premium feel. I'm going to go into details on all those individual components a little bit later on. Now let's first talk about what it isn't, because I have two very strong opinions on that. First thing it isn't is a tracker or a scrambler. I've seen people try and call it that because it has the tracker style tires and it has the bar across the handlebars. That's kind of like if I took my Harley and I put like race slicks on it, and then I put a Monster energy drink on the side and I told you it was a sport bike, you'd be like, no, that's not how it works. We don't have the ground clearance, we don't have the high mount exhaust, it's not a tracker, it's not a scrambler, and that's probably something that's better for honestly 90% of us. This is better than that. Take this. The other thing that it isn't, and this one kind of disappoints me, is it isn't very transparent on what its pricing really is, because parent company KTM, they like to put all of the little ingredients, all the hardware and stuff into the motorcycle, and then keep certain features locked away, and you gotta pay them more money if you wanna get those features out of your motorcycle, even though they're already there. This bothers me. Don't worry, I will go into more detail on that in the pros and cons section of this video, which is coming up right now. For pros and cons, let's talk about just how this motorcycle feels to sit on and to ride. Your knees are bent, but not too much, for a nice compromise between sporty feel and just all-day riding comfort. The handlebar is up high and wide, which means you won't have to be bent in a fetal position to ride this thing and have good control at the same time. That's a pro. Side note for my short kings and queens, the seat height is around 32 and a half inches, okay? Now that'll go down a little bit from the sag when you do sit on it, but you can do like a full inch lowering kit, and that is a factory OEM kit, and it also includes a shorter kickstand. So Husqvarna has you covered, that's a pro. However, that kit is like $438, I want to say. That's a lot of money for what is essentially like 2 pieces of metal and a couple washers. That's a con. Back to controls. The first thing you notice when you first sit on the Svartpilen 801 is, damn, this thing feels light. Wet, it's about 420 pounds. Husqvarna keeps the weight down by using what seems to be a trellis frame up there, which maybe is borrowed from KTM. And the motor, you'll see, is mounted really down low. In fact, part of the motor is beneath the swing arm, like substantially, which is kind of neat, keeps the center of gravity down low. I like it. And keep in mind, it's not very often we get a motorcycle that makes over 100 horsepower and feels this damn light. That's kind of awesome. So for newer riders, if this is maybe your second motorcycle or your first like full big motorcycle, when you get on this thing for the first time, you're probably already gonna feel like you already know how to ride it. You can also put it in rain mode just to simmer it down if you are really nervous. It's a really easy bike to ride because of that low center of gravity and that low weight, so that's a pro. Brake feel to me feels great. I thought I read online that they were 4-piston, dual disc brakes up front, one in the rear. The back brake also really complements what the work the front is doing really well, and I found myself definitely making use of it. I mean, they're Husqvarna branded, so I don't know what exactly they are. They're definitely not Brembos, or they would be branded that. But let's just put it this way. I did 2 emergency stops over the last couple days. The first one was for testing purposes, so I could tell you guys how it felt. And the second one was out of necessity. And I will say everything felt sturdy, controlled, pretty good amount of feedback. I have no complaints with these brakes. This is great. That's a pro. Shifting is super light, smooth. You get like positive little clicks, but it feels very, very light. The clutch also feels very, very light. I had 0 missed shifts, 0 false neutrals, 0 any issues whatsoever. That's a pro. But I realize now I did not test out the quick shifter functionality. I don't know if that's a thing you got to pay extra for, because I did see some sort of quick shifter related option on the website, and I don't know about the quick shifter, so let's just pretend it's not there and keep going. For the more experienced riders, when you put this thing into sport mode or race mode or whatever they call it on this bike, you will have fun. Okay, if you're looking to have fun, you will have fun on this bike, trust me. I ride a couple liter bikes. Let me just say that it's been a few years since the last time where I twisted the throttle really aggressively and my head actually went flying backwards. It's not very often that happens. And this bike did that. I was not expecting that. That's a pro. And on the topic of switching ride modes, one thing I gotta point out is don't be afraid of the menu on this motorcycle. So last week I was going through the menu on a BMW F750 GS. I cannot understand the menu hierarchy that BMW uses. Way too complicated. This menu is just normal. This menu is like, if you can navigate a TV guide on your TV remote, you are like a rocket scientist who will have no issues with this menu. This menu is simple, simple, simple. So that's a plus. On the topic of the TFT display and things that I forgot, it didn't even occur to me that, you know, phone screens are hard to read in sunlight, so maybe the TFT screen was going to be hard to read in sunlight, because that was not at all the case. Colors were bright, vibrant, high contrast, easy to see at any given point. I did a lot of riding around like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, where the sun is almost like at its peak, and no issues whatsoever with seeing the display super, super bright any time of day. It was awesome, so that's a pro. But I have to admit, I am not a fan of TFTs, and it's not this bike's fault. It's just, I come from this era, okay? You know, you had one of these, that was your speedo. You had another one over here, that was your tack. Everything's super easy to read, everything analog. I like my gauges analog still. That's where I'm at. And here's one of the reasons why. 1, I'm an old fart on the inside. 2, those TFT things, when you want to replace them, do you know how much they cost? On some motorcycles, it can be like $1,000 to replace your TFT screen if you get into an accident and damage that thing. If I want to replace one of these, it's like $29. I don't need to have all the colors. I got black and white, 29 bucks, good enough for me. TFT, unfortunately, that's a con. I'm sorry. And don't get me wrong, this motorcycle is not one where I foresee you crashing in your future, because if anything, it's actually really easy and pleasant to ride. And those two are not always the same, right? Sometimes you have bikes which are really high strung, make a lot of power. As soon as you let out the clutch, those things want to take off on you and you're almost pulling back the reins. Then you have other motorcycles where they're easy to ride, not hard, but they're so friggin' boring, right? You let out the clutch, nothing happens. You gotta really rip that throttle, push that thing, go, you know, wake up. This bike is kind of a sweet spot. Whatever they've done with this bike in road mode is job well done. That's a pro. So speaking of performance, we should talk about numbers on this motor a little bit. We are looking at 799 cc's, 105 foot-pounds of peak horsepower at 9,250 RPMs. We're looking at 64 foot-pounds of torque at 8,000 RPMs. It's got more than enough power for both city and highway, so that's a pro. Now, back in the day, parallel twins used to be my least favorite motor. They used to be like my old 2009 Triumph Bonneville. I've done a bunch of videos on this channel where it's like a 360-degree crank, and you know, that was okay, but like, it was really plain, it was boring, it was vanilla, there was nothing exciting. You took it on the highway, and it was just a big lump of steel on wheels. There there was no character, there was no soul to it, right? Husqvarna went in a different direction. Most manufacturers are these days with their parallel twins. They are doing 270-degree cranks. It makes it have a little bit more of a lot more character, a little bit more of like a V-twin delivery of the power, way more fun. Overall, I'm gonna say that this motor is fun, powerful, and intentionally good. That's a pro. And those are all features that make it really good either in the city or on backcountry roads. I particularly like in the city just because it pairs really nicely with the lightness, the nimbleness, the really precise handling of the bike. Having those upright ergonomics and that taller seat height just means that I can see over traffic around me and find the little corners and places to dip through on this bike. I was doing the kind of stuff that normally I typically reserve for my own personal bikes only, would never do it on other people's bikes, but on this bike, you just feel so good on it. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna go there and do that. And then you do it and you're like, that was easy, this bike's great. So that's pro. However, and yes, I'm nitpicking, but it has to be said because that's my job. If you wanna take full advantage of all the power and all the performance and all the gizmos and all that crap, there is a $504 Canadian dynamic pack. There is also a motor slip regulation pack. These are like software upgrades for $125. And while you're there spending money, you may as well grab for another 60 bucks a USB charging thing that plugs into your OEM factory harness. That's basically like another $700 for stuff that Husqvarna could have given you for free. I'm not sure how I feel about that because every other time I buy something, the software is already in the product and it comes with a USB-C cable. And here I'm buying the product and you're not giving me all the software and you're not giving me my USB cable and I just want the software and the USB cable. Why do I have to pay $700 more for that? That's a con. Now that being said, this is still a naked motorcycle, right? So if you want to do some highway blasts, if you want to do some ripping, maybe even like some longer highway rides, as is, this is not perfectly set up for you, and that's okay. You're gonna want a little bit more wind protection, to be totally honest with you. I did find that up to about 120 kilometers an hour, I was okay. Maybe you're gonna be okay to 125, 130, I don't know. For me, with the GoPro, 120 was as much as I was doing on the highway with this thing until there's some sort of bigger windscreen or something on there. So, it's a con, but like, you kind of know when you buy a naked bike what you're getting into, and that's kind of part of why they're beautiful, so it's not really that big of a con. Speaking of highway stuff, if you want to do a cruise control on this motorcycle, you absolutely can. That's the good news. The bad news is it's going to run you an extra $348 Canadian, and that's just the cost for the part, I guess. Like, I don't know if there's labor on top of that because there is a physical hardware component, but there's also like a software update thing. So it might be more than $348 for cruise control, and that's kind of womp womp con. However, on the good side, the last thing I'll say about kind of highway and touring and that kind of stuff is Husqvarna makes a factory option front seat. They call it the Ergo. I guess it's supposed to be more comfortable, and also rear seat for your passenger. That's pretty neat. I like the fact that you can buy them separately. You can drive just the one if you want. You don't have to buy the rear one. Cool. The rates also seemed okay. I think it was like $180 for just the rider Canadian, and I think it was like $320 or $330 if you buy both of them. Considering what aftermarket seats cost from like anywhere else, that's actually a great price, and the fact it's made by the manufacturer, you can pick it up from your dealer. That's a pro. I like that. And there's a bunch of little touches that aren't necessary at all, but that Husqvarna has done them anyway. And you won't even see these things until you buy the bike and bring it home and start really spending a lot of time with it. Maybe the first time you wash it, you'll start to notice stuff like this tail section. This is a metal piece, okay? Everyone else is gonna use plastic, and it's gonna be cheap, and it's gonna be like shaking like a freaking like this when you're at a red light and you're gonna look goofy. This thing is totally stable, not shaking. You have a great place to mount an action camera or a 360 camera if you want to. Husky didn't have to do that. That's just attention to detail. You have the mirrors that work surprisingly well, even at highway speeds. Husky could have cheaped out. They didn't have to do that. They wanted to. And then there's under the rider seat, where normally you lift it up and there's like wires in all directions. You're like, I'm afraid to touch that. What is that? You lift up the seat on this bike and it's tidy and organized and neat, and it's just so Austrian. Ugh. God, as someone who thrives in chaos, that was very upsetting to me. Anyway, point is, Husqvarna does so many small touches. I'm sure the longer, if I had more time with this bike, I would see even more. Those are the ones that popped up to me immediately, and those are definitely pros. So before I wrap up this section, just a quick overview of some of those different components that come together to make this a really great motorcycle. You have quality adjustable suspension, not cheap ones. These ones actually feel good to ride, and that's coming from a guy who does a lot of time on BMW adventure bikes, which have really plush suspension. I don't get on this and feel sorry I'm on it. I know it's sportier than my adventure bikes, but it still feels pretty good. I'm happy with it. So that's a pro. It also has great minimalist design that really hides the fact that there is so much going on. This bike brings so much to the table, but it looks really, it's not bragging. It's not braggadocious about how good it is. It's just quietly, confidently good. And that's kind of neat. I like that. So that's a pro too. This one is, I guess, kind of a pro, maybe not. You have the ability to pair it with your phone, and then you can have like your navigation right on that TFT display thing if you want to. I guess that's cool. I didn't really try it. I'm not really into all that stuff, but if you are, that's a pro for you. And then there are rider aids and all of the technology that comes with the bike. And I understand that rider aids are a good thing. They probably save a lot of lives. It's good for newer riders too. Great. I really only took one issue with this, and that was a few blocks from my house. There's this very steep downhill, like double S curve, and it's beautiful. It's fantastic. Whenever I want to know how a bike really functions, I go down this hill and I really try and get a feel of the bike, right? Something happened, and it felt like the bike was being autonomous. It felt like the bike stopped doing what I was telling it to do and started being like, I got you, and then just did its own thing. And I didn't really appreciate that. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was like, I think maybe it thought we were crashing because of this weird angle that we were pitched at, where we were both sort of like pointed downwards and then also tilted sideways. It only lasted 2 seconds. So by the time I kind of acknowledged that there's something weird happening, it was already like over. So yeah, rider aids, I guess it's a pro. You can turn them off. You can turn them off, so it's a pro. It's a pro. Rider aids are good. Remember to turn them off if you don't like them. I gotta remember that. And to be totally clear, I know I harped on like you gotta pay extra for this, you gotta pay extra for that. But to be totally clear, you do get a bunch of tech just standard with the bike, as you should. So you have ABS, you have traction control, you have cornering ABS. Ooh, cornering ABS. I wonder if that's what got me. Anyway, point is, there's still a ton of value and a ton of tech built into this bike. It's not that if you don't pay the extra $400, you're not gonna have a fun bike. I had a bunch of fun on this bike. Do not worry about not having fun on this bike if you don't pay extra. You can pay the base price and still have a very fun, very competent, full of tech, good machine. Don't worry about that. And finally, the big question. Who are the competitors to the Husqvarna Svartpilen 801, and is this the motorcycle that me or you should be spending our money on? Goes without saying, the closest competitor is the sister bike. It's the Vitpilen 801. It's a little bit more sport-oriented, different handlebar setup, that kind of stuff, ergonomics, more sporty, different tires, yada, yada. But I feel like if you're into this bike, you aren't necessarily into the Vitpilen. That's why you're checking out a video on the Svartpilen, so we're gonna ignore that. The next closest competitor is gonna be the cousin bike, the KTM Duke 790. Now, Duke 790, more sporty, more aggressive, more angular. I feel like if you asked a 20-something-year-old rider which motorcycle he prefers, he'd probably go with the orange bike, and that's fair. And then we get a little bit older, and maybe more mature, maybe just grayer, maybe just fatter, maybe some combination of all of them. And the KTM next to the Svartpilen stops looking so sexy, and it looks more and more just like an orange highlighter. Round starts to look better than pointy. Upright and relaxed starts to feel far more enjoyable than being folded into a little pretzel. And comfort-tuned suspension starts to make you think that maybe life is still worth living in a world that isn't so bad after all. So no, the Svartpilen 801 doesn't really compare to the Duke 790. So what would I actually cross-shop this motorcycle with if I was gonna slap down some money this weekend? The two bikes that honestly come to mind most for me, not the Vitpilen, not the Duke, it would be the Kawasaki Z900RS and the Yamaha XSR900. I've had experiences with both of those bikes. Of the three, the Kawasaki Z900RS, in my opinion, is the most beautiful. However, it comes with 80 pounds more weight. It comes with a detuned inline 4, and it comes with an inline 4 that is buzzy despite the fact it's detuned, so you're getting less power, you're getting the same amount of buzz. I don't see why you're punishing me like this. And for this gift from Kawasaki, they are charging you thousands and thousands and thousands more than this thing costs. So that's a no for me. And then there's the other option, the Yamaha XSR900, which also has a really fun motor like this one. The price point is actually on par with this one, but overall as a package, you can tell where Yamaha cuts some corners, mostly on the suspension. It's got different ergonomics too. The XSR900 is definitely more sport oriented, more aggressive. In my opinion, less good looking. Looks are subjective, I know. Don't body shame the motorcycle, it's not her fault. But the suspension is where you really notice it on the XSR900. Here's the thing. Our final option is the Husqvarna Svartpilen 801. When you spend 3 or 4 days with this motorcycle and you ask yourself, where are the weaknesses? They aren't immediately obvious to you. On the XSR, they are. It's the suspension comes to mind right away. The ergonomics come to mind right away. The weaknesses of the Kawasaki you will discover in the first 30 seconds when you turn the bike on. With this thing, you get on it and you ask yourself, would I buy this? You wanna know what the two weaknesses I found after 3 or 4 days with this machine were? The first one, it has, in all of motorcycling, by far the worst horn. Okay, the horn is like beep, beep, beep. The horn is terrible. That's a $12 fix. We can deal with that. We can accept that. The other weakness I saw is this exhaust. I can hear it in my ears, in my heart, in my soul. I believe in this motor. I believe it has the capacity to sound wonderful, but it will never sound wonderful with that freaking giant exhaust on there. In part, it's also me, because I have like 6 motorcycles in here right now. Only one of them has a stock unmodified exhaust. It's my little Vespa. I like exhaust to make the motorcycle sound like music. Not crazy loud, like music. This thing is being silenced and that's not good. Everything else on this bike is fine, it's great. I'd put some kind of windscreen. I would change the exhaust. I'd change the $12 horn to a $13 horn. That would sound fantastic. And life would be good and I would be done and I'd have no more mods to do. You guys who've watched my channel for a long time, you know I'm a picky bastard. If that's the only problems I can find in 4 days, that's a great motorcycle. So would I buy it with my own money? Yeah, absolutely, I would buy it. If I was shopping for one, I would buy it. Because it has all of the refinement of that Kawasaki and it has none of the terrible motor that I didn't like. It has all of the fun motor of the Yamaha and it has none of the cheapening down the parts when it comes to suspension and other little bits and bobs. That's a great bike. Should you buy one? Different question, right? Because this is my Goldilocks. This is my not too much, not too little. This is my just right bike. Your needs might be different. All I can say to you is, based on how impressed I am with this motorcycle, I think you owe it to yourself to go over to Studio Cycle. Go over to whoever your local Husqvarna dealer is. If you're in Toronto, anywhere close to Toronto, go to Studio Cycle because they're awesome. Sit on one. Feel how light it feels. See if you can take one out for a test ride because I was impressed. I don't want to say I was overwhelmed by this bike because that would mean it was like too powerful or too great. This is, but I was very, very impressed. And I think that before you spend money on anything else, you owe it to yourself to try and get one of these and take them out. Try it out. I think you'll have fun. I think you'll like it. If you are in the Greater Toronto area, do head to Studio Cycle. They do have also Aprilia and Moto Guzzi, and I know that they have demo bikes of those brands too. So food for thought. You can get out, try a few toys. But if this is kind of the genre you're looking for, don't buy without testing a Svartpilen 801. I think you will be impressed and happy. And that's the best endorsement I can give you. If you have any questions though about my experience, leave them down below. But if you watched all the way to the end, thank you so much for your patience. I hope that this was worth your time. Hit the like button if it was. I'm Adrian from YouMotorcycle. I try to make videos that help motorcyclists. As always, ride safe, but have fun. Peace.